Are you in need of some spiritual vitamin C? Well, I believe you came to the right place. My name is Kenya, and welcome to Spiritual Vitamin C, my podcast designed to fuel your spirit by feeding it the Word of God. So open up your spiritual medicine cabinet, your ears, eyes, and heart, and let's fill up on some spiritual vitamin C, which is truly the Word of God.
Hello. You are listening or viewing Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast. My name is Kenya, and I am so grateful that you are here. You could have chosen any podcast to view or listen to, and I'm so glad that you landed on mine. And so I want to say, I hope you're having a great week. I don't know if it's your Monday or if it's your Friday or whatever it is for you. I just wanted to say God is doing great things, and regardless of what it looks like, God is yet on the throne. And so for this episode, this is the official episode 1 of season 2. I know it seemed like the last episode that you heard, if you listened last week, it was like episode 0, and it was really advertising season 2, and it appeared to be like I was going somewhere, like I was actually going to start in on an episode, and then I just all of a sudden just shut it down. That was because it was really only supposed to be a preview. But today's episode is episode 1 of season 2, and I'm so excited. And as I stated earlier, you now have the opportunity to actually view my podcast. You can go to Spotify right now. It's only available on Spotify. You can go to Spotify and you can look up Spiritual Vitamin C, and you'll see what you're hearing. If you're listening audibly, you'll be able to see this episode visually. So heads up on that. So for today, it's really going to be really brief because I'm going to come back with my next episode, episode 2, and this is going to be a 3-part episode, and it's going to be about my life with dealing with Crohn's disease. And this season is going to take a turn. It's still going to be the Bible podcast on the go, but I'm now going to bring my amazing viewers a little bit closer in and let you know some of my struggles, which have turned out to be some of my greatest victories ever. And that's my battle with Crohn's disease. So let's get into it. Bam. Okay. So Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disorder where your body attacks itself. And so for me, my body is attacking my intestines, and Crohn's disease is an inflammatory disease. So, and actually the inflammation can actually manifest not just within your intestines, but it can manifest on top of your skin, and it can come forth and look a certain way, which is what I'm going to actually talk about in probably my 3rd episode, or the 3rd installment, which I think will be, it'll be the 3rd episode that will be dealing with Crohn's disease, and I'll bring forth how it actually manifested itself, not just within my intestines, but also on my skin. I'm so grateful that God has helped me. This has been a hard journey. If you know anyone who has Crohn's disease or who suffered from colitis, or who've dealt with having a colostomy bag as a result of Crohn's disease, or you just had a colostomy bag because of whatever happened in your life, just know that God has grace for us to make it through. And it is a hard road, but in those hard times, we can either choose to arise above it by God's grace, or we can kind of succumb to it. And I don't say that judgmentally at all, but that's been my experience. And so, looking at my life now and the huge role that Crohn's has played, and even in my personality, for those who really know me, I'm pretty goofy, kind of ridiculous in an amazing way. I'm very upbeat, sometimes high strung, and need help to come back down. But a lot of that has to do with Crohn's disease. When you're dealing with such pain, you just refuse to succumb to it. And so, it's just like these moments and these times where you're just so grateful because of the things that have happened in your life. And that's been my experience, that, in the hardest of trials, there's such beauty that comes as a result of it. And so, no, I would not wish Crohn's disease on anybody, but it's been an amazing teacher in my own life. How to be grateful for what you have and how to laugh. I love to laugh. I love to crack jokes. I take God extremely seriously, but I don't take myself that serious because life is hard. God is amazing, and it has helped me to get through, to love God, to love life, to love people by learning how to just allow some things to fall off. Kind of like my pastor always says, wear this world as a loose garment, like the ability to just be fluid. And so Crohn's disease has taught me that. It's been that has been an experience that has been hard won, but I'm grateful that I have it. So let me now begin at the very beginning, because I know I kind of jumped, kind of like a bird's eye view. But let me go to the very beginning. For me, I was diagnosed pretty early on. It was just one day. I just couldn't keep food down. Would eat and would throw up. And it would, at first, it began, the span between throwing up, it was pretty extended. And then as time went on, I began to not be able to keep anything down. So it began, just one day. It's kind of amazing. Just one day, as I look back, it was some like stomach cramps, and then all of a sudden, bam, I'm not able to keep food down. And maybe it was breakfast for like a few weeks, and then it became lunch, and then it became dinner, and then it became everything, and then it became water. And as time went on, I slowly got worse, and I was so tired of throwing up that I just stopped eating altogether. And then what began to happen is, because I didn't have food to throw up, I began to throw up my gastric contents, bile. I just began to, and then when that wasn't enough, then I just began to dry heave. And let me tell you, it was just terrible to be as young as I was and have to, I was like coming out of ninth grade, to be as young as I was and have to battle that type of an illness and not know anything was pretty traumatic. No one around me knew what was going on. There were whispers in the air that something like I had a disease that was killing me, or whatever. People can be pretty cruel, I think, just in general as an adult. But when you're a child or a young person, you have to hear what people think about you, and as adults, it can be really hard. So as time would go on, I went to school and I would be battling this, and I began to see just like my clavicle, it would be protruding out of my you could see it like underneath my shirt. Or I remember there was one particular time I had leggings on, and you could see my pelvic bone through the leggings. You could see it protruding. That's how small I had gotten, because I was so tired of throwing up and I just refused to eat. And then even when it would be a long time that I would go without food, maybe it'd be like a day. It wasn't like days. Even when I did drink water, it would come right back up. And that happened for 6 or 7 months. And I went to the ER, and they said nothing was wrong. I went to this ER. And let me tell you, I went on a journey of ERs, and for them to tell me nothing. So this summer that I was getting ready to go into 10th grade, that summer, I ended up moving to another city with my older sister. She was taking care of me at the time. And we were in her city going to going to the ER, and the doctors, they said nothing was wrong with me. Now, mind you, while all this is going on, I'm still getting small. I'm telling you, nothing but the grace of God that kept me. And then the pain, the cramps got worse. I eventually had to start eating again, right? Or I was going to die. So I just had to endure. For every meal that I had, it was just pain. I was throwing it up. And the pain got worse in my intestines, and it got worse, and no one knew anything that was going on. And I just remember I began to pop a lot of Tylenol. Thank God that there wasn't any like narcotics around. I think about that sometimes. I look back and I look at the hand of God and how things just worked out. And I'm grateful that like there wasn't any narcotics around. Like I didn't go to the ER and they were like, well, here, take some of this, take some of that. I would have been a serious addict, because the pain needed to stop, and it wasn't stopping. And I remember I was popping Tylenol, and I'll never forget one night I was at my sister, because I was living with my sister at the house. And I remember I was in my bed in the room, door was closed, and I remember I began to convulse. And I remember this, I began to convulse uncontrollably from head to toe. And I didn't know what was going on. My body just began to shake violently, and I couldn't stop it. And I remember it eventually stopped, and I was so afraid. I don't know if I ever told my sister, but I just remember I stayed in that room. I was so afraid. Maybe it was overdosing. Maybe it was like Tylenol toxicity, because I was popping Tylenol. I know that there is a not to exceed amount on it. I think it's 3,000, 4,000 milligrams. Listen, I was popping Tylenol just to function. And that night, never turned the light on. I was so afraid. And I remember that night I made like a truce with the pain. I mean, I was a teenager. I didn't know. And I just remember telling it, you can stay in my body. Just settle down. And get up, go to school, and still trying to go from ER to ER. And I remember I went to this this renowned ER. It was a teaching hospital. And of course, went to the ER. And when I got on campus, I was like, oh my goodness. I was so excited. I was like, yeah, they're going to be able to tell me what's wrong with me. Walked into the ER, walked out. I was so disappointed. You have no idea. How little did I know God was there the whole time. And then it was the last hospital. It was I will never forget. It was in December, and I went in there, and they immediately did an ultrasound, and they thought I either had sickle cell or Crohn's disease. And they immediately admitted me to the hospital. I was so dehydrated. I was so beyond with my weight. I was so far gone. They, like on the spot, they admitted me into the hospital. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks to a month. It was close to Christmas. I was just broken. Like my sister was gone. Mom and dad wasn't around. And it was Christmas time. I was just done. And I just remember feeling so sad. And I will never forget when I was admitted to the hospital, and for whatever reason, at this particular time, I had a room by myself, even though there were 2 beds in the room. And I'll never forget that I was so hurt and confused and didn't understand. And I remember in an instant, I felt warmth in the room, and the room filled up with the presence. And I'll never forget. And I, in that moment, was comforted. And I know now that it was the Spirit of God comforting me. I was so done. So as I got on my medication, like I'm talking handfuls of medication, got on my medication. And then my diet had to change, and I had to drink this like lactose-free milk. And it wasn't even a milk. It was like a cream that was like, it was a dairy-free cream that was like thick it just was super thick. And and like my taste buds were flipped upside down because I was taking new medications, and with every medication there's a side effect, and I was taking like meds. And so I ended up moving back to the city where I left, right? Where I was in one city, and then I moved to another city with my sister, ended up going back to the same city that I left. A lot was going on during that time. I was just starting high school. I hated 10th grade. Let me tell you, I hated 10th grade. And I loved school, but I hated 10th grade because I was so ill when I was with my sister at this brand new school. This school was like a university. It was a high school. It was in like a huge city. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was so ill. I battled every single day. So I'm kind of going backwards, right? So before I went to that particular hospital that diagnosed me and admitted me, I was, I had started high school, 10th grade, and I was at this humongous high school, and I didn't know anybody. So that alone is a lot, can be very traumatic. And I was really shy. I think I'm still shy now, but I was super shy then. And I was super sick. My only saving grace of that whole time is that I was a French student. I had been taking French since the 7th grade, and I knew what I was going to do in life. I was going to be a designer, and so I needed to learn French because I was going to France. That was the plan, and I was going to design for a fashion house. That was the plan, and so I started early. I knew what I was going to do, and that was the only saving grace about everything about going to school, is that I loved the French class. I was in French club, and I'll never forget, we were going to go to France that summer for like a quick immersion program, and they were going to help us to get there. And I was super excited, even though I was super sick. That was my only saving grace. And then I went into the hospital, and then I ended up moving back to where I was. And I was just like, it was such a traumatic time, tumultuous time for me. And God's grace, I am not kidding. God's grace got me through everything. Went back to the city where I was originally from, went to school, saw my old friends, but I was a different person. I looked, I'd gained some weight. I was on medication. I had a note that I had to carry to every teacher, and to inform them that at any time I needed to go to the bathroom, I needed to go, because anyone who has Crohn's disease understands one thing: bathroom. That's one word, right? Bathroom. Where is a person that has Crohn's disease knows where every single bathroom is, no matter where they find themselves. If they're in a restaurant, they know where the bathroom is. If they're on a plane, they're somewhere close to the bathroom. If you go anywhere to anybody's house, you know where the bathroom is. It's just kind of the hand that we're dealt. So as I would go from each teacher, I had to give them this note, because there are times when you're at school, the teacher's like, nobody can leave, so and so and so. But of course, and then that was a whole different issue. Like, there's so many layered issues about Crohn's disease. And I was already embarrassed that I had to take all these medications. I felt invaded by this enemy, named Crohn's disease. And then on top of that, dealing with high school is difficult anyways. And then on top of that, now I'm embarrassed because I have to hand this note to this teacher and let them know that anytime I need to go to the bathroom, I am free to walk out of your class and go. Let me tell you, God is faithful. God, just the grace, and just some of my teachers were amazing. My counselor in high school was amazing. I always say that God gave me 5 people growing up, coming from Arkansas to California. It was like a serious, rough transition. And I always say God gave me 5 people to help me through high school, because high school was rough. I just had a lot of life stuff happening. And so I just had like 5 people basically to help me through like life at that point in time. And so here I was in high school, navigating all the socials, the social stuff about high school. And I had this disease. And then I was going back and forth, like the children's hospital, because they had these top-notch surgeons and top-notch doctors. And so I was going back and forth from one city to the next to go to the doctors, and they were putting me on this drug and that drug and that drug. And, with every drug, there's a whole new set of side effects, whole new set that I had to deal with. And let me tell you, it was rough. It was rough, but God was faithful. And it subsided a little bit, and then all of a sudden, when I was 18 years old, it just like roared. Super ill, had to be checked into the children's hospital, and that's where I went into surgery. They did a resection. My intestines were so diseased that they literally had to cut out a section of my intestines. So went in, got the surgery done, and then everything just went haywire. Ended up getting really sick. And ended up almost dying. They said I turned gray. And I just remember I was septic from head to toe. I was just ill. And I just remember I was in so much pain. I just remember telling everybody off. And the nurses were crying. People were crying. They're like, Kenya, you're dying. And you need to go back into surgery. But the reason that I was fighting this emergency surgery is because they said that I needed to get a colostomy bag. Being as young as I was, and I had plans to go to Hollywood. I had plans to date and to do amazing things. No one has time for a colostomy bag. And when they explained to me what it was, I just went sideways. And so they're like, this, things went wrong. And now we have to take you back into emergency surgery. You're literally dying. And I remember telling them, I just remember telling them, let me die. The nurses were crying. People around me were crying. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget. I don't even know how he knew, but one of my brothers, my oldest brother, called me and he just said, baby girl, go ahead and get the surgery. You're going to be okay. Out of the blue. And I've never asked him how he knew, but he called at just the right time and he helped me. And I went into the surgery and I was so ill. I was by the time I was out of surgery, I was in ICU, like tube down my throat, sick, hanging on to dear life. And I had a colostomy bag. I would suggest, if you have no idea what a colostomy bag is, I would just say, Google it and you'll see. But it's where my intestines were so diseased, and the doctors explained it like this. They needed to reroute my plumbing. Just everything needed to stop. There needed to be nothing, no food, no water running through the lower part of my intestines. They needed time to heal. So they rerouted my plumbing, right? If you're looking at this visually, you see me doing air quotes. That's how they explained it to me, is that your plumbing is going to be rerouted. So they created what's called a stoma, an opening through my abdominal wall. They created an opening. They brought my intestine, a portion of my intestines. What is that? Like an inch and a half out to the surface wall of my abdomen, and they tacked it. That sounds strange. I don't know the surgical term, but they made sure that it stayed on my abdominal wall, so it protruded out of my body. And then, of course, you put a bag. I wish next time, maybe the next episode, I still have some bags left. I always thought one day, if I ever was teaching, or if I ever had, if I was going to preach or whatever, I always wanted to, if I was ever going to do it, I always wanted to keep a bag so that I could show people. I want to forever remember this time, because beauty for ashes. That's God's exchange program. Strength for fear. God is exchanging. So I never want to forget where God has brought me from. It's terrible, as tumultuous of this season of my life. The jewels that God gave me was hard won. I never want to forget the time. So a stoma is an opening, and so an inch and a half was brought forth of my intestines, and it protruded outside of my body. And then, of course, a colostomy bag was placed over the intestine, and it would adhere to my body, and the waste would dump out into the colostomy bag. You notice I'm speaking in past tense, right? That'll be maybe episode 2. I'll tell you why it's now past tense. And so I would have a number 2, a BM. That's how it would be. It would be like liquefied for the most part, unless it was like, depending on what I ate. But that's how I lived for 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. Can you imagine? And a day is 20 years and a day. I lived with a colostomy bag. Let me tell you, episode 2 is going to be the colostomy bag. But I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to tell you, I fought the colostomy bag. I was super mean to the doctors. I was literally dying. I was septic. I was like 1 foot in hell and 1 foot in the grave. But God used my brother to convince me to have this surgery. I was so traumatized. Surgery 1, that surgery 2, the colostomy, I was beside myself. It was a whole new way of life. And the emotional trauma, the psychological trauma, the mental trauma that I went through, I'm going to tell you about it in the next episode. But let me tell you, I went through it and I came out, but let me tell you, it was hard. But I'm grateful for every single thing that I've gone through with this ridiculous disease, because it has made me who I am today. I love to laugh. I love life. I love people. I love meeting new people. Even sometimes I'm breaking down meeting new people. I love life. And I think it's because I've been so close to death a handful of times. I'm grateful God is faithful. I'm grateful that He was there. I'm grateful for the people He put in my life to help me through. I'm grateful for the nurses, the doctors. I'm grateful for just God being faithful. And remember that He's faithful. He will bear us up on eagle's wings. He will never leave us nor forsake us. He will not allow the water to overflow us, but He will lift us up. As you go through your day this week, whether it's your Monday or your Friday or your Thursday or whatever, be reminded that God is faithful. He is always there. And He always cares. And He's always going to come through. So that's our time on today. I would say please remember to, if you enjoyed everything that you saw and heard, please don't forget to rate my podcast. Please subscribe. Please consider financially supporting. Please review. And please tell somebody else about it, especially because the next few episodes I'm going to be dealing with Crohn's disease. So if you know somebody that has Crohn's disease, that has a colostomy bag, that has colitis, let them know that I am sharing my testimony. And if anyone wants to connect with me regarding Crohn's and colostomy, the colostomy bag, please, you can hit me up on social at Spiritual Vitamin C, TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. I'm going to say bye for now, but please remember that life really does need a dose of Christ. See you later.
If you enjoyed this episode of Spiritual Vitamin C, please subscribe. I would also love it if you would rate it and leave a review. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, life needs a dose of Christ.